Welcome to Life Stories, where sometimes the person sleeping beside you isn't just hiding a secret, they're hiding an entirely different life. Imagine devoting 14 years to a marriage, only to overhear your wife say that the children you've raised aren't yours. Not just once, but with laughter, with confidence, with someone she's called the real one behind your back. What would you do? Confront her? Walk away? Or would you stay? And build a plan so precise it makes betrayal regret ever choosing you as its victim? This is not just a story about infidelity. It's about silence turned into strategy, heartbreak forged into resolve, and the kind of justice that doesn't shout but devastates. Stay with us, because what begins as a quiet discovery will unravel into something no one, especially her, saw coming. Now let's step inside the home where it all began. The coffee was still warm in his hand when Jack Bennet heard the laughter. It wasn't the kind that carried joy. It was hushed, mocking, slicing through the silence of their two-story home in Austin like a hidden knife. He wasn't supposed to be home. A last-minute supplier cancellation freed up his afternoon, so he decided to surprise Chelsea, his wife of 14 years, with her favorite drink. She was particular about it. Caramel espresso, extra hot, from a cafe halfway across town. Only they made it just right, she always said. Jack had imagined her smile when he handed her the cup, the soft kiss on the cheek, maybe even that rare sparkle in her eye he hadn't seen in months. He hadn't expected this. He stood frozen in the hallway, shielded by the wall near the kitchen, as Chelsea's voice drifted into the quiet. He actually thinks those kids are his. 14 years and not a clue. Ryan and I always joke. He's the perfect fool. Jack didn't blink. His breath, his pulse, his very sense of identity paused, like the world had skipped a beat and left him behind. The rest came in fragments. Laughter, her saying the kids looked enough like him to pass, that he was always too focused on building an empire to notice the truth under his own roof, that Ryan had always been the one. The coffee cup slipped from his hand and shattered on the hardwood. Not loudly, not enough to draw her attention, just enough to mark the moment his life cracked, silently and irreversibly. He stepped back, slowly, carefully, like retreating from a crime scene. And in some ways he was. Not the perpetrator. No, he was the scene itself. The lie. The collateral. Chelsea never saw the shift in his eyes that night. She never felt the way his kiss on the cheek cooled by a fraction of a degree. She didn't know he had started to study her, not with suspicion, but with precision. That was Jack Bennett's gift. Precision. He didn't scream, didn't rage. He cleaned up the coffee. He asked about the kids. He smiled through dinner. And when she made that offhand comment, "You've been so sweet lately, what's gotten into you?" he smiled wider. Because now he was watching. Later that night, he stared at the family photos on the fireplace mantel. Chelsea with her radiant smile, Mason hugging his sister Lila, Jack's arm around them all, proud and unsuspecting. The image was staged. A postcard sent from a life he no longer lived in. He opened his laptop and searched for private DNA testing. He wasn't ready for the truth, but he was done hiding from it. In the week that followed, Jack became a man of many masks. He played the doting husband with Oscar-worthy subtlety. He tucked the kids in, booked Chelsea a massage, sent sweet texts at lunch. And while she floated in the fantasy of control, he wove something far more intricate behind her back. A private investigator, a discreet family lawyer, a trust fund in his mother Linda's name in Scottsdale. Property titles shifted beneath layers of legal insulation. No detail left untouched. Each day, he sharpened his plan. Each night, he lay beside her in silence. The DNA results arrived on a Thursday. Jack opened the email with trembling hands. The words blurred at first, but not for long. Probability of paternity, 0%. For Mason, for Lila. He sat in stillness, listening to the clock tick against the wall, the sound now mocking in its consistency. His children, his world weren't his by blood, but the ache in his chest was real. The memories were real, the bedtime stories, the scraped knees, the first steps and first fevers. He was their father, even if their biology disagreed. But Chelsea's betrayal wasn't just physical. It was economic, emotional, strategic. And Jack Bennett had spent his entire adult life building companies by spotting risk, reading people, and knowing when to go silent before a storm. That night, something else arrived. A file from the private investigator. Chelsea, apartment complex, Southside Austin, 3 visits in 1 week. Unit rented by Ryan Cooper. Jack sat in the garage for over an hour, lights off, car idling. It wasn't grief anymore. It was something colder, purposeful. Patience dressed in war paint. Back inside, he found Chelsea plating pasta with her usual flourish. She asked him to grab the Parmesan. She joked about how Ryan still hadn't found a good woman, and wasn't it a shame? He passed her the cheese, smiled, and said, "Some people just aren't meant to have what they want." That night, while Chelsea slept beside him, Jack listened to an audio file. Her voice on Ryan's balcony, whispering that she planned to leave Jack once everything's secure. That she'd take half of everything. That he'd never see it coming. And she was right. He hadn't. But now she'd never see it coming either. What would you do if everything you built, your home, your children, your love, was based on a lie? Can someone still be a father when the world says he isn't? The next move Jack made would not just expose the truth. It would rewrite every rule of the game. And the birthday was only a week away. Jack didn't sleep that night. Not because of the DNA results. They were no longer a surprise. He didn't sleep because of what came after. At 2:14 a.m., his son Mason had knocked softly on the door to Jack's home office. His voice was quiet, unsure, like he didn't want to be overheard. "Dad, can I talk to you?" Jack turned in his chair, trying to soften his expression, though every muscle in his face was a war zone. "Of course, buddy. What's up?" Mason lingered in the doorway, eyes flicking between the hall and his father. "Mom said, if you and her ever split, we might go live with Uncle Ryan." A beat. "Is that true?" The words didn't feel like a punch. They felt like poison, slow, acidic, irreversible. Jack's mouth opened, but it took a second for anything to come out. "Why are you asking me that?" "I heard her talking on the phone," Mason mumbled. "She didn't know I was in the hallway. I don't want to live with him. He's weird." Jack exhaled and stood up. He crossed the room in 2 steps and wrapped his arms around his son, holding him tighter than he had in years. "You're not going anywhere, Mason. Not with him. I promise you that." Later, when Mason had returned to bed, Jack sat in the dark, back against the wall, staring at the ceiling with dry, burning eyes. Chelsea hadn't just betrayed him. She was rewriting the story of their family in real time, drawing blueprints for a future where he was erased. Not just as a husband, but as a father. That was the moment something deep inside him turned to stone. Until now, he had prepared his revenge like an architect, meticulous, patient. But hearing his son speak those words shifted everything. This wasn't a matter of justice anymore. It was a matter of legacy. The next morning, Jack called his attorney and instructed her to finalize the trust transfers. Every property, every asset, layered under shell corporations, funneled into irrevocable trusts in his mother Linda's name, tied up in protections Chelsea would never untangle. The house they were living in? Legally no longer his. The lake house in Michigan she adored? Gone, deeded to his mother last Thursday under a clause Chelsea hadn't even read. He smiled at her over breakfast as she scrolled through her phone. "Thinking about remodeling the upstairs?" he asked casually. She looked up, surprised. Oh, just browsing." Jack stirred his coffee. "I was thinking, maybe it's time we sell one of the rentals, free up some cash, make things easier." Her eyes brightened, and for the first time in weeks she touched his hand. "That's a good idea. You've been so practical lately." "Just thinking about the future," he said, and meant every word. Just not the future she imagined. That afternoon, Jack reviewed every contract Ryan Cooper had ever signed with his company. The connections were older than he thought. Ryan had been embedded in his business for nearly a decade, often through shell companies that trace back to one name: Coastal Ridge Services. The name meant nothing to most people, but to Jack, it was the project he'd funded for Ryan back when he was sleeping on their guest couch, fresh from a failed startup and a bad breakup. Chelsea had convinced him to invest in Ryan's idea. "He's family now," she'd said with that soft, syrupy voice. The same voice she used when lying. The betrayal hadn't started recently. It had never ended. But the twist came that night when Jack received a file from his PI containing surveillance footage. Ryan, at the mall, holding Lila's hand. She was giggling, skipping beside him like she was safe. Chelsea wasn't in the frame. Jack watched the footage 4 times, not because he didn't believe it, but because he couldn't comprehend it. Layla, his daughter, his baby girl. Ryan wasn't just her mother's lover. He was trying to become her father. Jack couldn't breathe. He staggered back from the laptop like it had burned him. His daughter's face haunted the screen. Smiling, unknowing, trusting. He slammed the lid shut. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was war. He spent the rest of the night combing through emails, financial records, and security footage. He drafted a legal claim to file against Ryan for corporate fraud. He cross-referenced phone logs, credit card slips, burner numbers. Every piece of evidence tightened the noose. By morning, Jack had built a full profile, and he wasn't done. He scheduled a meeting with a cybersecurity consultant who owed him a favor. I need a sequence, he told him. Private video playback. Triggered remotely, no glitches. The man blinked. You're building a live drop? I'm building a reckoning, Jack said coldly. The consultant didn't ask questions. And just like that, the weapon was ready. A remote-triggered stream, a presentation, photos, audio, a scan of the DNA report, and a single sentence saved for last. By the time he finds out, I'll have half his assets. What would you do if your child unknowingly held the hand of the man who helped steal your entire life? Don't miss what happens when Jack finally steps into the light and turns her perfect birthday into a perfect storm. The sun filtered through the windows like it had no idea the world was about to change. Jack Bennett adjusted his cufflinks in the mirror, staring at a reflection that no longer looked like a husband, but something leaner, quieter, sharper. His tie was charcoal, his shirt crisp. He looked calm, but inside him, a storm hummed like a tightly wound engine. Downstairs, Chelsea moved like a woman living in a dream. She wore a silver dress that shimmered when she turned. Her hair was pinned up just right, her lipstick perfect. She had been planning her birthday party for weeks. The guest list was curated for impact. Her boss, her cousin Mia, old college friends, and of course, Ryan Cooper. To her, this night was about control, about image, about making sure everyone still saw her as the elegant wife with the perfect life. She didn't know the script had changed. By 6 p.m., the house in Austin was filled with clinking glasses, soft jazz, and carefully rehearsed laughter. Jack floated through the crowd like a man at peace. He handed out wine, cracked jokes, made toasts. Chelsea leaned into him, whispering, I think this is my favorite birthday ever. Jack kissed her cheek. It's just getting started. At 7:14 p.m., someone rang a spoon against a champagne flute. Speech, a guest called out. Chelsea, blushing, pointed to Jack. You're the speech guy. Come on, make me cry. He stepped forward, holding a glass of champagne in one hand, a small remote in the other. Thank you all for coming, he began, voice even, measured. It means a lot to be surrounded by the people who've walked with us through 14 years of marriage. Chelsea smiled, glowing. And like any journey, Jack continued, it comes with joy, challenges, and sometimes revelations. There was a shift in the room. Subtle. A change in temperature only a few noticed. I could say a lot tonight, but I think it's better if I show you instead. He pressed the button. The lights dimmed. The screen on the far wall flickered to life. And then, there it was. A photograph. Chelsea kissing Ryan in a parking lot, wrapped in one of Jack's old hoodies. The room went silent. Chelsea blinked, still smiling, until her brain caught up to her eyes. Jack? She whispered. What is this? He didn't answer. Slide 2. Wire transfers from their joint account into a shell company under Ryan Cooper's name. Slide 3. A recording. Chelsea's voice, crystal clear. By the time he finds out, I'll be gone, and I'll have half of everything. Gasps echoed around the room. Someone dropped a wine glass. Her cousin Mia stood frozen in the doorway, pale. No, Chelsea said, her voice trembling. Jack, turn it off. This is out of context. Slide 4, the DNA report. Probability of paternity 0%. Chelsea stumbled back a step, one hand pressed against her chest like she could slow her heartbeat. "You think this makes you strong?" she hissed, her voice breaking. "You humiliated me in front of everyone. You destroyed our family." Jack stepped forward, voice low but steady. "No, I ended the performance. You destroyed the family the moment you chose to make me a stranger in my own life." Ryan moved toward the door, but Jack stopped him with a single look. "Oh, don't go yet." Jack said, "You haven't heard the rest." He turned to the crowd. "Ryan embezzled from my company. Under her approval, I have the contracts, the bank statements, the false invoices, and I've already filed charges." Ryan's face drained of color. "You can't prove that." "I don't have to," Jack replied. "The FBI's already watching." People began leaving, quietly, uncomfortably, some shaking their heads, some not saying a word. When the last guest left and the door closed behind them, Chelsea stood frozen in the center of the living room, glittering like glass. "You think this is over?" she whispered. Jack walked to the dining table, pulled out a folder, and placed it in front of her. "Your copy of the divorce papers. You'll be served officially in the morning, but I thought I'd give you your gift early." She didn't touch it. "You moved everything?" she asked, eyes hollow. "Months ago," he said. "Where am I supposed to go?" He didn't answer. That night, Jack sat in the guest room, staring at the ceiling. He didn't feel triumph. He didn't feel rage. He felt quiet, as if the war was over but the echo still lingered. He thought of Mason, of Lila, the children who weren't his by blood, but who would never stop being his in every way that mattered. He wouldn't let Chelsea turn them into pawns again. He would fight for joint custody, not to punish her, but to protect them. The next morning, the sheriff delivered the official filing. Chelsea didn't cry. She didn't yell. She simply sat on the bottom step of the staircase, robe pulled tight around her, looking like a child who had just been left behind at school. Jack didn't look back. She left the house that Sunday, carrying a single suitcase. No goodbyes, no theatrics, just the final silence of someone who thought they'd won until the ground fell out from under them. Weeks passed. The house breathed again. Jack repainted the living room, switched out the furniture, donated every photo that felt like a lie. He started running in the mornings, cooked dinner without background tension, laughed with the kids without wondering if it was the last time. And then one Tuesday, an envelope arrived. No return address. Her handwriting. Inside, a letter. She said she'd been thinking, that she missed their life, that she had nowhere to go. And then, "I'm pregnant, and it's yours." Jack read the words once, then twice. And then he laughed, not cruelly, but with something close to pity. Because what Chelsea didn't know, what she had never thought to ask, was that a year ago, during a rough patch, Jack had made a quiet, permanent decision. A vasectomy. He never told her. She never imagined he'd stop trying. And that, in the end, was always her flaw. She never imagined he'd stop being the fool. How did this story make you feel? Were you surprised by how it ended? Comment 100 if this story moved you. Tell us what country you're watching from. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And thank you for watching Life Stories.